Child of the pure, unclouded brow, and dreaming eyes of wonder, though time be fleet, and I and thou are half a life asunder, thy loving smile will surely hail the love gift of a fairy tale. Today on the Comic Book Report, Alice Ever After from Boom Studios. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today we're back in the world of Boom Studios to take a look at a trade paperback collection I've had my eye on for some time. Yes, of course, we're talking today about Alice Ever After. I'm not sure if I've ever shared this on the channel or not, but I'm a huge fan of all things Alice in Wonderland, and I have a fondness for fairy tale-like stories in general. So seeing a comic book adaptation that takes its own creative liberties at the Alice in Wonderland mythos or franchise, I knew this would be one I wanted to check out. Imagine my delight then when Boom Studios saw fit to provide me with this review copy in exchange for this honest review. Thank you again to those at Boom for making this happen, and now let's go ahead and start today's review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this collection were written by Dan Panosian, with art from Giorgio Spalletta. The issues in this volume were published by Boom Studios beginning in 2022. The volume itself collects Alice Ever After, issues 1 through 5. And finally, this is a standard-size trade paperback collection with glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and a total of 128 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and with that, here's our first dedicated look at the front cover for today's trade paperback collection, and right from the top, I really love the stylization of this cover. I like that we have this beautiful kind of border frame that has some of the characters showcased. It really does feel storybook authentic. I really like that. Also having a more adult Alice trapped in a kind of pill bottle, it definitely speaks to some of the themes and plot bits we'll get in this story. Transitioning to the spine design now, we do have a pretty straightforward spine here. We have the publisher, of course, Boom, Alice Ever After, the title here, followed by the creators. No real bells and whistles here, and interestingly enough, we're not calling it a volume 1, even though I believe there is a sequel graphic novel, Alice Never After, so that is something to be aware of. And on the back cover, we retain a lot of the color scheme and things like that, which I like to see. We have a description of the book, what it collects, the creators, some accolades or reviews about the book, pricing information, things like that. A few more of those rich character models and musical notes, which I like to see. Some really cool design flourishes there. All pretty standard for a back cover, no complaints from me, and again, I really like the attention to detail, retaining all the same colors. And now for all you prospective collectors out there, I did want to provide a brief look at this edition's binding. So as I mentioned, this is a glued binding, all pretty standard for trade paperback collections of this kind. I'm happy to say the gutter loss on my collection wasn't too severe at all. It laid down fairly well for me, but of course you can make your own determination as I flip through the collection. Okay, and with all that out of the way, we can go ahead and begin our journey into Alice Ever After. As we open up the collection, we of course have that little title page that has that blurb from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass that I read at the top of the video, followed by a publication information page, creator breakdown page, and then we jump right into issue 1 of this 5-issue book. Now I did mention there is a sequel graphic novel of sorts, Alice Never After. However, I do believe you can read this as a standalone as well. Personally, the ending is a bit haunting, but I do think it is effective as a series conclusion if you prefer to just be a one and done here. So let me set the stage for Alice Ever After, because like me, you might be wondering exactly what is this book's take on Alice. Now this is a more adult look at the Alice in Wonderland mythos. We do follow an adult Alice in this case, and the themes are a bit darker or more mature. We have a lot in here about substance abuse and drugs and childhood trauma, things like that. So it is not for the faint of heart. In fact, I would not recommend this to younger audiences, but of course, reader discretion advised. So what we have here is Alice really addicted to a lot of these pills. When she takes these pills or opiates, she gets transported in her mind back into Wonderland. So there's this implication that she had this fanciful land as a child, and now she chases the high of it as an adult, or at least that's my interpretation of the reading here. So we have her as pretty much a drug addict. Her whole family and social circle all really expresses concern for her, although some for their own selfish means, and others because they genuinely want to provide her help. So a lot of the early plotline is her trying to score some drug money for these pills. Her drug dealer ends up getting dispatched or killed kind of in front of her, and before too long, she's thrown into a mental asylum. While she's there, longtime fans of Alice in Wonderland will note a lot of similarities or mirrorings from characters in the Alice mythos and those that populate this asylum. Or drug treatment facility is probably the better way to call this. But basically the warden or kind of overseer of this whole clinic is really the Queen of Hearts, just in a different form, at least kind of visually in what we see. Her two kind of lackeys or orderlies at this institution are very clearly Tweedledee and Tweedledum, although of course they don't go by those names. And we have a couple other analogs like that. Alice never really makes that association, and they never really explicitly say that necessarily, but you can definitely infer it, again, as a fan of Alice in Wonderland. And that brings me to the next kind of point here. Can you read this without being familiar with Alice in Wonderland, whether that's from the Lewis Carroll novels, the Disney film, or the general cultural penetration in the zeitgeist awareness of Alice in Wonderland? I would say yes, you can still read this and enjoy it without having any of that framework. However, I heavily recommend some of that, at least kind of the Disney film or maybe the first novel, just to kind of have a loose understanding of how these characters function. But I don't necessarily think it's necessary, but you will certainly pick up on a lot more Easter eggs. At any rate, she tries to befriend people within this institution. She is given drugs here and there to keep her medicated and sedated, and whenever this happens, she does again mentally go to this Wonderland. Interestingly enough, the art changes pretty dramatically whenever she's in Wonderland to this more realistic, kind of painted style, as opposed to this more kind of animated look we have in the real world. I thought that this was a nice flourish as well. I like that we get some artistic diversity here that really separates out when she's tripping in Wonderland versus just being lucid in her everyday life. But what we have in this is less an exploration and kind of a journey through the fantastical landscape of Wonderland and all of its near mythical creatures. No, what we have here is really a study on addiction, childhood trauma, and her trying to escape kind of cycles of abuse. We basically find out that she has seen her father, who is a predominant dentist in their community, even serving some nobility. We find out that he ghoulishly takes teeth from dead bodies, including her recently deceased mother once upon a time when she was a child. To help her forget, he was heavily drugging her and helping her trip into this Wonderland space, again to cover up some of his more shady dealings so he doesn't lose his place of honor or prestige in this community as a dental professional. So Alice basically has to repress or forget what she has seen her father do to her own deceased mother and just in general. No one really believes her, and they kind of gaslight her into thinking she's unstable, just an addict and insane. Along the way, she does become addicted to these substances and really sees them as a means of escape, not really wanting to confront a lot of the trauma of her past. Her younger sister is oblivious to a lot of this and really just wants to support and get help for her sister. There's also a kind of romantic suitor, perhaps, a childhood friend that really has a soft spot for Alice, who has tried to defend her at a couple different junctures. However, her father and her stepmother are really trying to keep her incarcerated and just doing more and more treatments to keep her from revealing the truth. This ultimately leads to a situation where the treatment facility is trying to lobotomize her or electroshock her into oblivion, and her sister and this romantic kind of suitor or friend try to liberate her from this asylum. Unfortunately, they are too late, and she undergoes treatment, and ultimately this story ends with her kind of forever in Wonderland and more or less catatonic in the real world. A pretty grim, dark ending to a fairly heavy story. There are, of course, other kind of twists and turns along the way, friends she makes in the asylum, different confrontations, but that's really the overall shape of this storyline. I touched on the art earlier, but I am a fan of it. Both the kind of present day, real world art style, I really love the flourish of colors we get and all the character models. I will say the art is almost more lively or colorful than the heaviness of the story would suggest, but I think that juxtaposition is interesting as well. The art we get in Wonderland as well is gorgeous, 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 and I like the discrepancy in style. I think it really just pops right from the page. At the back of the collection, we do have a cover art or variant cover art gallery of sorts, some full page and some thumbnailed and smaller across the page work. We also have a couple sketches or character models, which was nice to see as an extra, and that really brings us to the end of today's trade paperback, again, Alice Ever After. Quick overall thoughts on this collection. I think I was really hoping to have a more fantastical, kind of lighter-hearted approach to Alice in Wonderland, maybe an exploration of that landscape, but what we have here is something darker, heavier, with a lot more adult themes, again, explorations of drug addiction, childhood trauma, and it was just not what I expected. That's not to say it's a bad work by any means, just, again, a little different than what I anticipated. But now, the grade. For a riveting look at the realities of addiction and childhood trauma, packaged with a thin veneer of Alice in Wonderland isms, the Comic Book Report is going to give Alice Ever After from Boom Studios a B-. For me, this was definitely still an above average read. I was charmed by all of the art styles that I saw throughout the book. I thought the characters were pretty well defined, honestly, and some of the conflicts were engaging, thrilling, and again, page turning. I do like this book. I would be interested in its sequel, even if this missed the mark for me on a couple bits. I would have loved a deeper exploration of Wonderland and kind of the playfulness there, rather than some of the heavy realities we had here. That's not to say this is a bad work, but again, just a little bit different than what I had expected. But let me know what you think about Alice Ever After, or if you're a fan of Alice-based properties in general. I'd love to get some great conversations going in the comments section. A huge thank you for everyone for watching this video, and for those at Boom for sending this review copy in exchange for this honest review. Until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, comment, and maybe check out another video on your way out. Thanks so much. Bye.